I guess we should get the OpTic updates out the way. I know a lot of you guys have been wondering what's been going on there. It's not good news if you're an OpTic fan. Obviously, it's become a fucking saga that has really started to just escalate out of control. So everyone's got a podcast now. And I'll tell you why that is actually. Everyone's got a podcast. Podcasts are one of the ways you can make money from media pretty easily because they have long viewing times, right? So you get high, minutes view, which means more exposure to ads and product placement. They're very low-fi to create, and so they don't eat into your once you built a podcasting studio and you have a podcasting setup, boom, you're there, right? And all you really need is guests, right? Which is a little bit of budget. And very often you can even tie it in with marketing companies. So if a guest has something to sell and you can say, hey, our podcast is reaching X amount of people. So why don't you come and plug your book or plug your fucking, your grilling machine or, whatever the fuck it is. Come onto the podcast. It'll reach multiple people and we'll talk about some shit and I get some content. So, sometimes it's not even a paid appearance. You just put, here's a hotel, here's a flight. Come and do your thing, So it's very cheap content and it's very monetizable. This is why podcasts have just proliferated. I mean, it's crazy. And you say low key, I'm trying to get more sponsors. Now I just know how this works because it is the thing that I do and know about. So, but that is, if you've ever wondered why everyone has a podcast, that's why. So Nate Schott has his own podcast now. Called Self-Made, I believe it is. So let me get the clip from that. Come on, I know you're there. I definitely put a like on you. There it is. So, I'll just use the tweet. That was better. So you might remember last stream, what I did was I watched Hector's podcast where he finally got to talk openly about everything that went on. That's Hector, who obviously founded and owned OpTic up until he sold it to Infinite, a brand that wanted to come in and basically sort of take over all of these esports stuff. And basically they ran it all into the ground, OpTic India, complete farce. All the Overwatch League contenders teams they were trying to take over, complete farce. Just failure after failure after failure, and a very expensive failure. Listen, Kai, people will say you have no idea why he sold. It is money. You got to understand. I'll repeat it. It's not selling out when you have literally lived hand to mouth for as long as Hector did. If you know anything about Hector, I'm sure he's talked about this publicly. I don't think I'm giving anything away. But he grew up really poor. Like me, but that's right. Poorer than me. He's told some stories about literally the kind of poverty he lived in. Not mine to repeat. I don't know what's out there, so I won't. But we're talking poor. Right? And then he created this thing, and he's worked unbelievably hard on this thing. And the reality is, no matter how successful a business is, you build it and you build it and you build it, but you all the money you make that goes into the business, it doesn't go into your pocket. You draw a salary, even as the owner, even as the founder. So you can assign yourself a large salary, but you don't just get to dip into the corporate account anytime you want. You want a holiday? That's coming out your salary. It ain't coming out the business. It can't. It's illegal. So even if you are the guy who runs it, right? And so a lot of the money that OpTic was making, because it did have some unbelievably successful sponsorship deals, promotional deals back when Hector was in charge, that money goes into a corporate account, and then that money is getting getting used to basically further the reach OpTic has to get new teams, to get new buildings, to get new right. Hector's always put that money back into the business. He never took vast amounts out of OpTic. He was living comfortably. Don't get me wrong. He was he had a decent salary. But when a big VC group comes in and says, we want to buy the majority of your ownership so we can have complete control over the business, name your price, and you name it, and they go, yes. And we're talking millions, like overnight. So whatever you've already got, say roughly you add 10 mil to that. That's why you sell. Because as much as you love OpTic, you think to yourself, I'm still going to be involved. I'm still going to be on the board. These people are my friends. They're not going to let OpTic get fucked over. It'll be all right. And I'll have, and again, I'm pulling this number out my ass, but, if it was 10 mil, I'll have 10 mil.
If the earth is flat, why do all of these codogs keep going downhill, thinking?
Cheers for the donation, but Pounder, good to see you. So that's how Hector had to think about it. It's life-changing money. His kids, his family, everyone he loves, he can do right by them for the rest of his life, for the rest of their lives with the money he made. For the love of a brand, for the love of a team, the strength it would take to say no to that I don't think it exists. This isn't about being tempted. Now, if they'd said, we'll give you the life-changing money and we'll completely fuck over your org and put it in the ground and ruin it, I think Hector loves it that much, he would have said no. But the point is, you think these people are competent. They run businesses. It's a big VC group. It's got, you assume, you think it's going to be okay. And it doesn't matter if it's bad, because you're there and your friends are there. And when the board members are there, we can course correct, we can fix it. But it didn't pan out like that, as you saw in the podcast that we watched. Basically, people he thought were his friends wanted bigger cuts, wanted bigger says, wanted to stay comfortable, not upset the status quo. And when it came to do right by OpTic fans and do right by the OpTic brand, they hung Hector out to dry. Insane decisions that were being made by the board, and it needed a unified front to challenge them, and there wasn't a unified front.
Question I've wondered since. When you had OpTic J on the podcast, did you know he was spitting some absolute BS by throwing Cheney under the bus as much as possible, or did you not know the extent of Jay's errors at the time?
Listen, it's a tough one. Trying to think how to frame this. So when I did the Jay interview, and we'll go big head for this. When I did the Jay interview, right? I knew that he'd been complicit in some of the shit, sure, and I had to ask the question. I had to ask the questions as hard as I could. I thought I asked real questions. I mean, I don't think it was a softball interview by any stretch, but maybe people disagree. And if people disagree, that's fine. I don't think it was a fucking softball interview. But equally, I knew if I wanted to get as much information for the OpTic fans as possible, which is ostensibly what you do the interviews for, to get to as much of the truth as you can. And there's nothing you can do as a journalist, by the way. Okay, if Jay said, so I asked Jay a question, my understanding is, so, okay, I ask him, so you've been helping Hector in the boardroom and agreeing with Hector, right? And he goes, yeah, that's absolutely right, Richard. Me and Hector have a good relationship still, and whatever Hector wants to do, I'm completely there, and I always vote with Hector because I love OpTic, and Hector basically made me and made OpTic, so no question about it. And then I have a document, like minutes from a meeting, a recording, something like that completely contradicts that statement. Obviously, I pull that out. I pull it out, I drop it and go, you're full of fucking shit. What are you lying for? And we sit there and it's awkward, and then the interview probably gets cut short. But I would do that because I'm that kind of guy, obviously. The problem you have as a journalist is if everybody fucking lies and you've got no evidence to catch them in a lie, All you can do is just ask more questions. Maybe they trip over themselves. Maybe they contradict themselves. Maybe the lie gets bigger and bigger. Maybe they change their mind partway through. Like, how deep into the lie do I want to go? All you can do is ask the questions. So what I was doing was trying to get to the bottom of what was going on internally with OpTic and how much Jay was involved in that. Having my own suspicions, having my own beliefs, but ultimately it's my suspicions and beliefs cannot dominate the interview. It would be really unprofessional. So if I sit there and go, I think you're lying, mate. I mean, it's not an interview at that point. It's like an interrogation. It's something else. It's not best journalistic practice. So I had to basically ask as many of the right questions as I could and put faith in the answers. Now, again, I'll own it if people watch that interview now and think I took it easy on Jay, or it was a softball interview, or I didn't ask the right questions. At the time, it was very well received as an interview, and people thought I was asking hard-hitting questions. I think there's a little bit of, when you look back with the benefit of hindsight, and you can see where he's lying, that might color the interview a little bit differently. But I don't think I fucked up. But then again, I'm human, right? So I wouldn't blame myself. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's for the community to determine. I think if you look at the interview, I think it was solid. I don't think it was softball. I think there was a lot of tough questions in there, and I think I tried to get as much information pertinent to OpTic fans' interests as I could. So, but did I know he was bullshitting? I mean, I think everyone's a fucking liar. I mean, that's a default position, right? You know what I mean? Like, when you're in this line of work, yeah, everybody lies. So, anyway, so what became apparent was just how sort of terrible Infinite were running things, and they decided to get the fuck out. Right? I mean, they wanted to get out of OpTic in particular because that was the jewel in the crown. And they announced it. It was pretty much out there very early on. Like, as soon as they wanted to get out at the start of the year, it was public. Jacob Wolf reported it over on ESPN. Here it is. The Texas Esports to offer majority stake in OpTic Houston Outlaws for $150 million. I doubt very much they've got that. And certainly that doesn't sound right at all, because they were in big debt. Big time debt. They as I'll show you in a second, they were hemorrhaging a lot of cash. So I think at that point, that valuation's very optimistic. But I don't think people knew just how bad it was at that opportunity. Now, because Immortals wanted to get into LCS via some sort of backdoor thing, that was the company that wanted to jump in and kind of take the spot, take the brand. That's they want to own multiple brands and multiple teams and multiple products, and they're that conglomerate, the Immortals Club. That's all funded by that. With the Bitcraft money that's in there and a bunch of other stuff. Everyone needs to keep an eye on those motherfuckers, because they're going to be into some shit very soon. They got way too many overlapping interests to stay clean for a long period of time. There is some shit going on there, and the fact that they already backstabbed Noah Winston out of it means that I give even less of a fuck than I already did about digging into all of their shit. So these guys basically became the fucking favorites to take over and buy the brand. Now, there was a lot of conflicting reports at the time about how much that it was going to be and who was going to get it, and Hector was trying to bid for it. And at the time, I think I did the stream, I think it was inaccurate, actually, that Hector had tabled the highest bid. Initially, people had said, like, there was some report floating around saying Hector has bid more than Immortals. I don't think that was possible at that time. I think he had to go out and secure more money. But Hector has done everything he can to try and get this back. I don't know why they don't want to sell to him. It's been communicated that maybe some old bitter rivalries have flared up because Hector was always telling these motherfuckers, like, you're ruining the brand, you can't do this, you can't do that, you got to listen to me, you know, this is how the ship needs to get steered. I don't know what it was. But, you know, and I can't confirm if that's true or not, and I don't even think Hector himself has said that. But for whatever reason, they don't want to sell to Hector. And Hector finally said on this Nade Shot podcast, I'll just show you a quick clip of it, that, yeah, he actually did bid more than the Immortals guys.
That's right.
Which is insane.
Good luck going forward, Rich.
No worries. Thank you, Abu. I appreciate it, buddy. So here it is. I'll just...
Where is OpTic going? What is OpTic going to be? This is...
As of this moment, and it's public, obviously, that Immortals is making a bid for it. It wasn't as good as the bid that I submitted to get OpTic back, but for some whatever reason...
Wait.
Yeah.
You submitted your own bid to buy OpTic back yourself?
Yep. Yeah.
Explain that.
Explain me. So it was simple.
Explain
6 months ago, I approached the ownership group. 7 months ago, I approached the ownership group, and I said, let me get OpTic back. I wasn't asking for a discount. I was trying to make them some money, so they, whatever. We gave it a good run. It's not working. I tried to warn them at the beginning of the year that, what was happening at that point in time it just wasn't sustainable.
So, what does that mean when you say wasn't sustainable, right? Let's get into that fucking atrocity. But you can see there, you can go watch the whole thing. I like Nade Shot, so again, just full disclosure. Obviously, I'm tight with Hector. That's not a fucking secret. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt, because the last thing I want to do is come across like Keemstar, working on behalf of FaZe. Putting out all of the, putting out all of that propaganda, but I will be biased naturally towards Hector. I think Infinite were incompetent, and I think they were malicious in a lot of areas. So anyway, what does that mean? Not sustainable. Well, what's interesting is it got to a point where, according to a report I saw doing the rounds, they were supposedly losing $1 million a month or something. It was crazy. I got the report liked somewhere around
Cheers
here.
for all the content recently, cutie.
Thank you. No worries. Thanks for the sub. So there's a journalist that you can find on Twitter. The handle is at PAN, so Pan, Dax, DAAX 92. So Pandax 92. That's also their Twitch TV handle.
You're not even a real journalism.
And her name is Amanda Zalauskas. And Amanda Zalauskas has had a level of access into this that, might even exceed my own. The sources and the sourcing seems to be solid. So you can go over to her Medium where she's publishing. And again, I can't believe a publication hasn't paid money to go get her work, because people definitely want to read this. But I'm going to vouch for her and say so far no one has contradicted any of her reporting whatsoever. And she says here, Infinite Esports and Entertainment was losing over $1 million a month. The final days of Infinite Esports at OpTic Gaming seem to be approaching, and one source was able to shed some light on different decisions made by the company, which might have led to its downfall. Right, so here we go. In fact, you know what? It's not that long, and I'll get into some of this stuff, and we can just sort of go through and pick apart the information. There have been people that have contradicted this report, have they? How many of them work for Infinite? Because if it's Infinite, then that probably is right. Let me just look up who this guy is that people are telling me.
You're not even a real journalism. That's right.
So who is by Adam? Reporter for ESI. All right, okay. Adam. Oh yeah, I know Adam Fitch.
You're not even a real journalism. That's right.
Keep doing that journo thing.
So he doesn't directly say it's bullshit, right? He just says, don't believe everything you read.
You're not even a real journalism. That's right.
Picked up RimWorld off your recommendation.
Good
Really
game.
fun game.
It certainly is. Thank you. All right, well, listen, I'll say this. I like Adam Fitch, too. I'd vouch for Adam Fitch.
You're not even a real journalism.
Definitely. Got more experience than this Amanda. But, you know, listen, like we found with, you know, Jacob Wolf and Sir Scoots having that argument over, you know, Call of Duty franchises. Sometimes you just got to wait and see how that fucking rides out, right? So, some parts are wrong. Well, listen, are you free to jump on Discord, Adam? While we go over this? Yo, can you hear me all right, Doug?
I can.
Yes. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Is this like the first time we've ever talked? Like voice to voice?
Yeah, we spoke on Twitter a little bit, maybe about a week ago, something like that. But like,
Yeah.
actual speaking, yeah, first time.
All right, awesome, dude. Well, listen, fan of your work. Definitely vouch for your legitimacy as a journalist to the stream and everything. So I'm super intrigued because you know, I like there were large parts of this report that definitely were in line with things I thought I knew.
Okay.
So what I'll do is like I'll just sort of read little points out, and then you can sort of tell me, you know, whether this is accurate, whether you disagree, how it aligns with your own reporting, and that sort of thing. Is that all right?
Yeah, I think there's some bits I don't want to get into to potentially protect a couple of people. If
Sure,
that
I
makes
get
sense.
it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, just say, just if you can't comment, just say no comment, dude.
Okay, but a little bit of background quickly. So the first report about the banknote and such, I came out and bullshitted a lot of that. And well, I said I don't. I've heard conflicting things, and me and Amanda spoke and basically said it becomes a source versus source kind of war, and it's kind of pretty pointless. So I didn't want to come out and say anything publicly here, but I said on the OpTic Discord, I believe that not everything's correct, but I didn't want to kind of go out publicly again and kind of disparage anything she's done, really, because I wasn't comfortable writing anything up of my own at this time. So that's the background on that anyway.
Yeah, no, and I understand that, buddy. Like, it's always a tough one because, I mean, here's the thing. As crazy as it might seem that you have to state this to the general public, sometimes sources lie.
Yes.
You know, everyone thinks they're all playing their own fucking super intricate Game of Thrones, right? So sometimes someone will be like, oh, hey, I'll give you the real story. And what they mean is they'll use you to plant stuff in the public domain that behooves them for the public to believe. So it's very so when it comes down to a source on source war, like one journalist has one source and they're saying one thing, and then a journalist has another source that's contradicting their source. You get into this thing where it's basically about. I mean, one of the skills of journalism is sourcing, right? It's knowing who is good, who especially when you're dealing with like one source and who has access and who has information and who can be trusted and everything else.
Yeah.
So
well, I just find it interesting how both of the reports like are titled just source. So like for me, I've always gone at least 2. I tried to do 3 or 4 sources, but Amanda's got so much faith in this one person that she's willing to just cite their things, which makes me question things there. Especially when me and her spoke. I'm not going to expose anything, but kind of hinted towards the position her source was in, and then I spoke to 3 people I'm in contact with, and they all casted doubt on it. So it's a tricky one, I will say, but obviously no one's exposing who they're talking to. So
it's like a fucking game of poker in that sense. I mean, listen, dude, I think I agree with you. Just as a general point on sourcing, it's always been I've had absolute down gangbuster stories, right? Like that with just one source that I'm like, I can't do it with one source. I don't know this source. It makes sense that what they're telling me should be true, but unless I can get number 2, verify it, I'm not going to run the story. But then there have been some stories where the source is somebody that I have like a long relationship with, and every time they've been right. So I will always try and get that secondary source, but if I don't, if it's an exceptional source and I absolutely unequivocally trust them, a one source story does happen, right? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I have no idea, whether Amanda has that kind of relationship, whether this person's using her, because obviously, you have to look at the cynical component to it, which is obviously for an unknown and upcoming journalist, if you nail reporting on a story this big, boom, this is how you get bylines at other publications. So.
Of course, and that's the situation I'm in now. Like besides the small PUBG thing, like the whole Infinite situation is where I'm really stepping out and doing my own investigations and getting in touch with people and putting out reports that are really unique to myself. So I'm in the same boat in a sense. So it's interesting. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, well, listen, I think I got to commend you for the mature and classy way you at least dissed fellow journalists report, right? No, listen, I'm being serious. A lot of back in the day when I was coming up, brother, it would have been an out and out shit fest. Like, I mean, some of the stuff I said to Thorin like fucking 10 years ago, whatever the fuck it was, is outrageous. People have seen the DMs, like it's pretty bad. People have seen the tweets. Twitter was the Wild West back in 2010, But like he did like a tweet that was like just denigrated an article I wrote. It was like he said, Richard Lewis's latest article can be summed up as Counter-Strike journalist finds Google, types in StarCraft, right? With something like that. So I just went to fucking DEFCON fucking 1.
Understandably.
And just said like, I leaked some very personal, like it was absolutely unacceptable, the stuff I said. But we got over it, we got past it. So it is very commendable that you didn't like link to the article, call her out by name or anything like that. I totally respect
I actually just messaged her privately to discuss it more than anything, because at the end of the day, again, it's source versus source. Nothing's like officially confirmed yet. So to come out and say, "Oh, you're chatting shit. You've completely lied here," and then if I'm being lied to, I really don't think I am, or else I wouldn't come out and say these things. But
true.
Yeah.
So let's break down some of these points then. I can ignore the first paragraph because that's just background from the other story. So a high-level source communicating through an audio-based channel with direct involvement to the situation, reached out to share their side after my report on Infinite Esports owing a multi-million banknote by May 31st. This source wishes to remain anonymous due to professional and personal repercussions. This source is not the same person mentioned in my May 31st article. I gotta say, that's actually all very good journalistic practice, what she's done there by explaining why the source is believable, making it clear it is just one source, why the source has come forward, and why the source must remain anonymous. Like, even I, sometimes fail on that, right? And you are supposed to do that every time you use an anonymous source. You're meant to explain why their information's valid and why anonymity has to be used in this instance. So that's all very professional in that regard. But you were talking about, you thought the stuff about that $20 million promissory note was bullshit. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So while they have spent a lot of money, like a shit ton of money, I'm not denying that. Like, from what I was told, like straight after the report came out, like sources got in touch with me to basically just say it's like it's a ridiculous statement and it's just absolutely all false. And they even went as far as to say that they think Amanda was being fed misinformation on purpose. So when I'm getting that from people I trust, like, I have to I want to go against it, because the thing is, everyone's left in the dark, even like Infinite employees, never mind just the fans, like people who actually work and have a living. So I wanted to come out against that in a sense. So yeah, I've heard that the banknote thing isn't true, but I'm not saying that Infinite's in a good position financially.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone could push it that far, right? Like, that would be fucking Jack and Nori. Okay, so the first bit here is Cheney at the wheel. And it says, before OpTic Gaming was officially purchased by Texas Esports, Chris Cheney began pitching the idea of investing in esports to different venture capital firms in and around the state of Texas. That's all true. According to my source, Cheney approached several VC firms about investing in a different esports organization, Evil Geniuses, in 2016. That's true. Those firms told Cheney no and would only be interested in big esports brands. 9 months later, Cheney approached the same firms with OpTic Gaming. Once they gave him approval, Cheney then began talks with Liebman's Group. According to ESPN Jacob Wolf, Cheney's Cheney Sports Group advised on the Liebman deal. To the best of my knowledge, all of that additional stuff is accurate. So no problems with that, right?
I wouldn't say so, no. Like, some of this stuff's before my time, and I haven't done a massive deep dive on Cheney. I'm more up to date with what's been going on more recently, but I mean, I wouldn't dispute any of that stuff.
Yeah,
got no reason to.
As soon as OpTic Gaming was acquired by Liebman, several different entities were created in order to hold equity in the deal and creation of Texas Esports. The purpose of a holding company is to control... yada, yada. We all know what holding companies do. Here is a list of the splits for each company. Texas Esports LLC and various venture capital groups under that umbrella had a 77.5% split. Aurelius Esports LLC had a 22.5% split. Now, I don't know about the specific numbers.
I will say the same.
Yeah. Okay, good. On It Moves. As of writing, Infinite Esports and Entertainment currently owns and controls the following companies/brands. OpTic Gaming, Houston Outlaws, Triggerfish, Obey Alliance, Team Allegiance, GGEA, and Infinite Performance Institute. And yeah, these were another one of these big brands that actually got to fucking skate on the whole conflict of interest thing, because, they had like multiple teams that were in the same games in some instances. And again, it's become almost like blasé, right? That orgs are doing this.
Yeah, it's just like, I'll just put them under a different company or different name and just go for it.
Yeah.
But I will say, I believe Obey, Allegiance, and OpTic had no overlap in terms of the games they were competing in. I think when they're all under this, under Infinite, I will say.
Okay.
I believe that's the case.
All right.
So they were careful with that, at least.
Now, this is where it'll probably start to get interesting, and I'm guessing this is where the conflict start to creep in. Hemorrhaging cash. According to my source, when OpTic Gaming staff, players, and content creators began to arrive at the new Infinite Esports offices in Texas at the end of October 2017, there were around 70 people sitting in cubicles. This is also confirmed by Hector, owner of OpTic Gaming, in an episode of the Eavesdrop podcast. I walked in during the beginning phase of the Infinite offices, and I was blown away, they continued. I saw about 30 people sitting at their desks, either on social media or browsing the internet, because they had nothing to do. Now, sounds about right.
Yes.
For a tech startup, just been at a startup myself. The hiring policy of most startups, for those who don't know, is you basically chuck shit at a wall and see what sticks. You have lots of people. You have a very short space of time to get things up and running. You don't know people's competencies, even if you've interviewed them. You don't know what people's work ethic's like, what personalities are going to get along. So you have a tendency to overhire and then whittle down. You fire people for incompetence, and you distill down to people that will work correctly. So again, all seems pretty straightforward. Later in our conversation, they described a situation where a large group of OpTic and Infinite staff were sent to a competitive tournament event. According to them, this was not an unusual occurrence. I don't understand why 15 staff members need to go to an event. Paying for travel, lodging, and expenses for 12 extra people is one quick way to drain cash. I'm guessing you have no particular...
I don't know. I wish there was an explanation as to which staff were going.
Yeah, sure.
But... I mean, it's hard to say anything against that without specifics.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely say this. I know firsthand, from stuff I heard and talking to other people in the Infinite machinery, like there was this sort of initial novelty factor, right? Where people wanted to just like go to events on the corporate account and, let's all go and fucking hang out at esports events. Aren't esports events cool? And what happens is at the start, people do that because they want to get out there, they want to, network, they want to show, successful we are, and we'll all go down there and we'll all wear branded gear and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually the novelty wears off and people go to those events less and less, And that can happen at even the highest level. Think about how Hastro stopped going to CS events once his fucking team sucked ass. It just, people just get bored eventually. All of Infinite's expenses, which include infrastructure costs, staff salaries, athlete salaries, travel, and more, lead the company facing a major problem with recovering that cash. It is alleged that Infinite Esports began to lose over $1 million each month. Does that chime with your knowledge?
So I've, to be completely honest, I've heard that number isn't. Well, the thing is over $1 million. What is that? That's just anything. But like,
true, actually. Yeah. Good point.
Over $1 a month. It's like, yeah, probably. I've heard things against that, but I can't say specifics. But I don't know. I heard, and I don't know how. I haven't completely confirmed this, but the number of 120 million being spent in a year was what I heard. That doesn't mean they lost 120 million.
Yeah, that was their spend.
Yeah. So I mean, that just kind of shows how liberal they were with the cash. So I mean, I wouldn't even, I wouldn't imagine that they were making a lot of money. So therefore, they would lose a lot of money. So I can see how that's the case, but I've heard things that are differing a little bit.
So I mean, it sounds
still they were losing money.
yeah. So and you're right actually. When you say over $1 million each month, I mean, it could be. It sounds like from what you're saying, it could even be higher. So it's a very safe ballpark number that also gives you the salacious element to the headline. I mean, that's the bit everyone like beams in on, right? Like, what, you were losing $1 million a month, and then, actually it was worse than that,
Yeah.
Okay, Liebman Infinite Esports, Aurelius Esports, and various other investors began to question why money was draining so quickly. In June 2018, there was a meeting set up by Cheney and Ryan OpTic J. Musselman to discuss restructuring Infinite's model. This meeting was organized without Hector's knowledge, and while he was away on a business trip. According to Hector, he and Musselman have not spoken since 2018.
Okay, so I was explicitly told not to go into huge detail on this at the time. Sure. So, but the whole meeting thing there is incorrect from what I've been told, and by the person I trust, the source I trust the most out of all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
The date, the date's not right, even though that's not the most important thing here. The people that it was.
Well, I say it is. It definitely undercuts reporting accuracy if a date's wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's a problem.
I've heard that the date's not accurate. the people who set up the meeting's not accurate. The subject of the meeting is accurate, and there were some repercussions if certain people didn't turn up. That wouldn't have been good for them, so they were kind of forced to go.
Right.
So that's as specific as I can be without being specific to not upset anyone.
No worries.
So I definitely have a problem with that. Mainly that paragraph for sure.
Okay. I mean, the one thing I can say is as well, I mean, it was always my understanding from just having like an intimate knowledge of what was going on behind the scenes. It definitely, I like the part about Hector not talking to Jay definitely feels, 100%. Yeah, that feels real.
Yeah, well,
to me.
Whenever Jay would comment on Reddit acting like the hero because something had gone right for once, like Hector would like come out publicly and say something on Twitter, and nobody would ever put two and two together. But like, there's a reason like Old Men of OpTic weren't playing together anymore, which was the kind of a staple beforehand. Yeah. I thought it was rather obvious if you knew what you were looking for that there was a rift there. So I'm not denying that part.
Yeah, and you know what I'd heard was that basically it was that you know, Ryan had sort of decided that it would behoove him more in the long term to kind of play nicely with the more corporate element of Infinite, right? And he wasn't willing to fight the battles that Hector was gonna fight because it was becoming increasingly apparent that they wanted little involvement with Hector's ideas. They didn't want to listen to Hector. So the way it was framed by kind of like, if you're pro OpTic J, was that he was faced with a choice of being ostracized the same way Hector was and having little input into OpTic. But if you look at it from the other side, it was that, you know, he'd promised Hector he was going to always make sure that they would be a unified voice. And as soon as it looked like he might get marginalized or sidelined by the board, that changed. And he actually became one of the corporate voices in the room.
Yeah. Well, I think he said in your interview with him that he just kind of sat by and let some things happen, and he should.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the interview, at the end of the interview, he did admit that he could have been a better friend to Hector. He'd made a few mistakes. You know, he could have stood up and fought a bit more. Which to me is
he's probably being nice to himself on that as well.
Sure, yeah. So as a mea culpa, it's very, you know, it's very, you know, easy to kind of put that forward. Oh, I could have done more. You know what I mean? Like,
really?
Exactly. Yeah, I could have done more. You know, imagine it, right? So yeah, it is an apology. It's an apology. It's pretty tame. But yeah, I mean, I just heard that. You know, there was an irreparable break in the relationship, both from a friendship perspective and from a business perspective. So I absolutely do believe that Hector hasn't talked to Jay since 2018.
Yep, I would not deny that at all. Nowhere near. I think he's come out and said that now anyway.
On October 10th, 2018, it was reported that Cheney and 19 other employees were laid off from Infinite. That's true. I remember that.
It was more than that, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say 19 feels a very modest number.
Because I had a list on Twitter compiling all of the Infinite employees just to keep an eye on everything because it was growing at such a mad rate. And I was making a list of people who had quote unquote left or been laid off around that time, and it went into the 30s. So that number as well. But that's what they said themselves. So
yeah. Muscleman, that's OpTic J, assumed the position of president at Infinite Esports, where he still remains. Several companies under Infinite, like GGEA, have since shut down due to Infinite's restructuring. So yeah, OpTic J did get the presidency, if you want to frame it that way.
It did, but it was always supposed to be temporary.
Yes. And it's going to be very temporary because the company's not going to fucking exist. Yeah. So I mean, the thing I think that is important, and I think that I'd really like to find out one way or the other is, like, when he was given the presidency position, because it was temporary, I'm going to guess, just knowing what I know about corporate structure, I'm going to guess he didn't get a big pay rise or a pay bump, or there was, like, no financial incentives. Like, the only additional thing this would have brought to him is just job security, honestly. I don't think, like, he made money off taking that position. But I have no idea if that's true or not. But
I wouldn't be surprised if he was the reason they were losing $1 million a month because it was all going to him, and he was doing that all. No, I don't know. No,
well, no. I mean, let's let's talk about, before we move on to the next bit, defending the green wall and talking about the acquisitions and stuff. Let's talk a little bit about like what's your understanding just in general, because you've done some reporting on this going back to May 18th, right? You did. What was the article you wrote?
I did two. So one was called the Immortals were close, and the other one was that the sale was imminent because at the time a decision was going to be made on a meeting which was supposed to be on a Monday, and then things kind of went on from there.
Okay.
Things kind of changed a bit. So what was it you would?
Yeah, well, just what's your general understanding about management and who's been making what decisions? Who's been really driving the business in the absence of Hector's voice being in the room, as you understand it?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's it all boils down to one person, which is what I've been saying for a long, long time. Like, I think there were perhaps too many cooks in the kitchen as such, and that's kind of where some of the misguiding that happened just occurred, because I genuinely think there were too many voices, and so many of them weren't even endemic to the scene, didn't even know how to operate within this industry, which is very different from any other, especially say sports. So of course, like, Chris Cheney was an important part of leading Infinite in its early days. But I do believe a lot of other people had inputs as well. But ultimately, someone has to have the final say. So that's fair enough there. But there were a lot of wheels in motion in terms of partnerships and such before the whole restructuring happened. So like Triggerfish were involved, and as we both know, like, partnerships don't just happen overnight. You don't just email somebody and go, "Oh, should we partner up and you give us this money and we'll give you these deliverables?" Like, it takes time. And Jay came in, and then things like the Mountain Dew sponsorship and Nissan more recently have come out, and he was on Reddit kind of claiming those victories as such and saying, "Yeah, we're steering the ship in the right direction now." Right. But those things were already kind of happening. So for me, it's a strange one. I think Jay gave the impression that he was doing everything once he became in control as president, which I don't think is the case. And I do think it's a case of too many people being in control. I don't know what you've heard on that.
Yeah, it's a tough one, honestly, because when I still maintain this, and it's a difficult position for me to be in, honestly, because and I've said this on multiple streams whenever we've talked about OpTic. For me, there's no way I can ever let Chris Cheney off the hook.
No, and I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah, I know. Sure, I'm not saying you are, but
there's a reason it got to the position it was in where it needed to restructure. And I mean, he was the president, so I mean, a lot of responsibility has to go onto him. Like, but I agree with that. But
I feel okay. So when it gets to the stage of like an OpTic J, where you deliberately decide to turn your back on a friend and a business partner of many years, to basically kind of feather your nest, whereas Chris Cheney was just common or garden incompetence, too much money, not enough knowledge, made a lot of incorrect decisions, and I think probably what he's learned is like, I still want to be involved in esports. I'm good at getting money. I'm gonna go with Hector and help him raise the money and run shit. And I think that's why Hector's like, okay, you get it now. You understand why you needed me as the captain. So let's not fuck up the second time. But Hector obviously won't throw his boy under the bus publicly, but I'll absolutely do it on his behalf and say that, Chris Cheney was as much a part of the problem as anybody else at the company. It's just the betrayal is a lot more fucking visceral in everyone's minds because of OpTic J's relationship with the org and with Hector. But Chris Cheney fucked up as much as anybody, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of had like a public redemption arc with like the whole thing of revelation of Hector working with him to try and
absolutely
his intentions have always been good. I mean, I myself have been very careful online, but I have said perhaps the person claiming all the credit shouldn't get it, and perhaps one person isn't at fault or stuff. But like, obviously, there were a lot of things he seemingly, I don't know exactly how things operate in there, but like or how things operated when it started. But I mean, you have to imagine he did a lot wrong, and that's the reason it got to the position it's in. So like, there's no denying that. I think overall it's just been a shit show.
In particular, as well with valuations, I would say. buying teams. I mean, like, again, I think OpTic India was like Chris Cheney's brainchild, for example.
The whole OpTic global thing. They got female Brazilian CSGO team,
female Brazilian
Southeast
CSGO team,
Asian stream team, which did nothing. They were streaming on Facebook. What else did they have? They had the Mexican Gears of War team.
Yeah, that's
which
true.
Never did anything near what the main team did, and then obviously the Word.exe mastermind.
Yeah, yes, obviously, Forsaken. Yeah.
So there was quite a lot there, and that all happened very quickly. And at the time, I was kind of thinking, this could be a good idea. They do want to be a global leader. I didn't know whose idea it was. I was more coming as just a spectator at that point, but then it quickly became apparent that it went against everything OpTic stood for, which was like a family feel, and then it's not going to be cheap either to do such a thing.
Yeah. So here we go. Defending the Green Wall. As the final announcement of Immortal's purchase of Infinite Esports' majority stake remains imminent, Hector is reportedly attempting to claim what he can of the OpTic Gaming brand. According to two independent sources with direct knowledge of the situation, Hector agreed to own the following percentages of these companies following the 2017 sale: to own 10% of OpTic Gaming LLC, to own a percentage less than 10% of Infinite Esports and Entertainment, and to own a percentage less than 10% of Aurelius Esports LLC. So any input on that?
Again, I wasn't given direct numbers, which is what it is. But I believe those may not be entirely accurate too.
Okay.
From what I've been told by multiple people, but because I haven't been given numbers myself, I don't know how much stock I put in it. So it's hard to say on that one, though. I don't know. That's why I wouldn't come out and say anything publicly. It's just like, don't believe everything. I don't believe everything is true. And I mean, it's always a pinch of salt thing until something's announced officially, anyway. But yeah,
I mean, all I knew from talking to Hector directly and just asking around was that, it was told to me, I always framed it as saying that it was a controlling share, and basically that means 51% or upwards. But it was clear that he'd, sold a sizable amount to give them the freedom, if you like, to make the corporate decisions that they needed to make, but still retained enough that he would be a very influential voice on the board. Now, in big companies, if you own 10% of a company's shares, trust me, you're getting a say. So 10% might sound small, but it's definitely sizable from a corporate perspective.
Exactly, and so as I say, I won't give an exact numbers, but I don't think they're right. And and that kind of goes with what you just said. If that's the case for OpTic, at least.
As of writing, sorry, no, finish.
No, go for it. Okay. No.
As of writing, OpTic Gaming LLC owns trademarks over the following brands: OpTic Gaming, the OG logo, OpTic Gaming in capitals without the capital T, and the term Green Wall, which blows my idea of him getting Green Wall Gaming, evidently.
That would be awful for me. Oh, God, that doesn't sound good. But no, I haven't heard anything about these, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did own that.
Yeah. When Immortals Gaming assumes the majority ownership of Infinite Esports, they will then have the majority ownership over the OpTic Gaming brands, along with all of its attached trademarks. An announcement on the deal is expected later this month. So, I mean, basically, the big stumbling blocks, as you see it, are the issues surrounding the meeting without Hector's knowledge, and the overall amount of money that it was allegedly losing.
Yeah. It's small little bits than big bits, to be fair. But nonetheless, if I don't agree with something wholeheartedly, I'm not going to share it and actively support it or write a report based on it.
That's fine.
So I didn't do that. And I mean, as scumbag as it was, I did retweet my "don't believe everything you read" thing, and it's up to people to apply that to whatever they want to apply it to. But I mean, they wouldn't necessarily be wrong if they applied it to that report.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah, no worries. I totally get it. So, is there anything additional to like just the general stuff that's going on? Because I'm gonna keep talking about the aftermath of the podcast and like kind of where it's all headed and that sort of thing. But just in regards to this report, it looks pretty much like Infinite and that entire group's going to pull out of esports altogether. OpTic's going to be transferred over to the Immortals Gaming Club.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's cost a lot of people a lot of money. I also did read, actually, that Hector was trying to get the teams that OpTic couldn't hold on to.
So the initial thing I heard was that, so obviously Immortals owns the Valiant in Overwatch League, so they seemingly can't hold two teams at once. So they were going to set up a separate entity, a holding entity for Outlaws. And then more recently, I heard that if Hector was unsuccessful with this bid, that he would attempt to get Outlaws, which in theory would help him with his bid in the COD Franchise League.
Right. I see.
That's what I was told there, and also. They've got MIBR, so there's conflict of interest there if they end up to Gaming's Danish roster, so I believe they would be gonzo. I don't know how profitable Gears of War is, so why would you keep them? Call of Duty, I'm pretty sure the roster would want to follow Hector wherever he went, so I can't see a world in which OpTic stays alive after this if it does go to Immortals, though I do think they will get the LCS spot, but I know that's what they want, and then they'll do a Dignitas and rebrand, which was announced today.
Yeah, it was actually
mind-blowing to me. Oh, we want long-term partners, and then like a year later, we're buying and selling like nothing.
Well, I mean, that's ultimately what all these franchise slots are about, right? It's like it just
making
becomes
money.
Yeah, it just becomes a commodity, and if you can do a quick asset flip and make like millions of profit, like in a short space of time as a year. Most of these people who are coming into esports now who aren't part of the fabric of the environment, they'll just do that. But I mean, it's interesting actually because I did hear like again, this is why I haven't written anything about it, but I heard conflicting versions. A source of Blizzard actually told me they didn't give a fuck about the joint ownership thing. They just wanted two functional teams in the league. It's all hands on pumps over there right now.
Wow.
So
okay. I haven't heard that.
but I mean, like I think even if that is the internal thinking about it, very quickly the public, the public aren't going to stand for that. I don't think, even in fucking Overwatch.
The public don't really seem to care too much about conflict of interest and stuff. They don't care about the important
that's
stuff.
True.
But you'd like to think the Overwatch League fans are maniacal and a bit fanatical to the point where they probably would say something about that, especially their precious Outlaws.
Yeah.
People love those guys. So even though they can't win,
so I think the reports that I've heard about Hector, like trying to pick up the teams, again sounds pretty accurate to me, and probably
it sounds in line with his character. I don't know the guy personally, but I've spoken to him once. But I mean, like he seems like he likes to look after the people who's in his circle. So it's a fair assumption to believe he'd do that, and it also lines up with what I've been told. So I believe that's the case.
So now the question is, what's he gonna do in terms of like create, like what's his org gonna be called? I think I even texted
that's a good thing.
That.
Well, I think so. Before OpTic, there was Plague X, which is an awful name with capital letters and a 3 in there. So I would honestly hope he never goes for that.
Yeah, let's not have Plague X.
Villains in my head, but I don't know how that's relevant to him. But I feel like it may be in some sense, whether it's something like a clothing.
Yeah, someone just typed that actually.
But so I don't know. I think that would kind of make him. I don't know. It would definitely work well with storylines and such, them being the villains of the scene and all this kind of stuff. But even though really it's Immortals who'd be seen as the villains, so I kind of don't know if you'd go for that. I say it's hard to say, but yeah, they're the two names that jump out at me, because I think they both got ties to him, and
you're not even a real journalist.
It makes the most sense. But I'd probably go for something brand new, probably 99 Thieves or something.
What's up?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, why not, right? But yeah, like I say, it's been a fucking shit show. I mean, like I don't think people realize just how badly run Infinite was right from the start. I want to write some other stories up. Like, again, I don't know how familiar you are with what was going on behind the scenes with the Overwatch contenders, where they were basically like trying to strong arm players, and basically Blizzard gave them their blessing to control, like, just sign up as many contenders teams as you want.
5 teams at once. Under the whole like the academy team, and they'll move on.
Yeah, Infinite wanted to own every contenders team. That was their business plan. So I mean, I don't even know.
Out well as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely did. So look, man, I appreciate you coming on just to clarify that, because like every time there's like a chance to talk with a reporter about the work they're doing, like I like to take it just so I can sort of get their perspective and everything else. So yeah, is there anything just to add before you pop off, or?
No, I would like to say thank you for inviting me on.
No, yeah. Tell people your Twitter handle. Is it at by Adam Fitch?
It's at by Adam Fitch, which is my name, my username everywhere. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't take my name, so it's by Adam Fitch everywhere. I don't know. I'm kind of being a bit quiet recently until I've got something really to say on this whole matter. But yeah, I just want to thank you for getting me on it. I mean, it was like 1:30 in the morning. I just got into bed.
Oh, sorry, dude.
See what no, it's cool. I was like, I'll see what's happening on Twitch. Saw you were streaming. I'm like, okay, let's have a look. And then I saw my name. I was like, oh god, here we go. But no, I really appreciate it, and it was fun.
Nah, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. You keep doing good work, buddy, and no doubt our paths will cross once again. So I appreciate you for coming on the stream, dude.
No problem. Thank you very much. Cheers.
All right, catch you later, buddy. So there you go, Adam Fitch talking about the reporting. I think overall it sounds like there's some details wrong there. It even sounds like maybe they were losing more than $1 million a month, which is so mind blowing to me that Infinite were fucked up to this degree. Like you have to think about how hard it is to be hemorrhaging that amount of money. Like in an industry where it's very clear where your expenses are and where your revenue streams are.